and welcome to Quilt Moxie, the podcast, where Quilt Moxie meets Craftsy.com, an online community dedicated to providing the best education and resources for crafters. Join me, Ariana, your host, and come along on my video journey where I participate in the Craftsy online classes and community. Meet up with us online at quiltmoxie.com or at your favorite hangout, Craftsy, Ravelry, Facebook, Twitter. Check the credits at the end of the show for more. You can also subscribe to our mailing list to get your next and every episode with show notes delivered directly to your email as soon as the episode is available. It's as simple as dropping your email address and checking Receive Podcast by email. Welcome to episode 19. Today, we're going to begin our podcast in the gallery. Then we're going to talk about 2 Craftsy classes, Brilliant Knit Beads by Betsy Hershberg and Improve Your Knitting by Patty Lyons. I'm going to talk about the contest winners. We've had 2 contests that we were running, and today's the day that we're going to find out who they are. And I'd like to conclude today's episode, just before we get our first winter storm, with a demo on stranded knitting. So let's get started in the gallery. You might notice behind me, first of all, we have our fireplace going because it is cold and tomorrow is that big first winter storm here in Quebec. So we're getting ready. In the gallery, we have 2 items. One is a finished UFO, unfinished object from last summer. You might recall last summer I took a quilting class with an extraordinary quilter, Pierre Vernix, at our biannual quilt show in Montreal. And she showed us how to do trapunto, free motion quilting. And I took that unfinished object and transformed it into a finished object. Now, why would I do something like that? Well, Linda from our Quilt Guild has decided that this year we were going to do a challenge, and the challenge was to finish one of your UFOs. And so I decided I wanted to do that with the trapunto free motion quilting project that Pierre had showed us how to do. So you'll see in the background, you probably don't see the trapunto effect. And also you might notice that it's all full of color. Well, I couldn't leave well enough alone. Pierre's work is white on white. Her work is extraordinary. So if you get to see her at a quilt show, be sure to check out her quilts. They're just absolutely stunning. But what she showed us how to do is here in the back. I'm just going to walk you through it a bit. Over here, the colored portion, which is sort of the flower area, is the trapunto. In other words, you've got an extra layer, in my case it's wool batting, so to puff it up. But because I colored on top of it, you will not see the puff effect as much. The other thing that she showed us how to do, which is a lot of fun, is free motion. She has a unique way of teaching free motion. And the first thing she has you do is score your piece of work. So for example, she has us sort of score some lines into blocks, irregular blocks throughout the quilt, and in each one of those blocks you just free motion to your heart's content whatever motif that you would like to do. Now the color part was also because I do watercolor, and I got some new toys in my watercolor life that I wasn't able to experiment with because I've been knitting. And they're called Inktense. In my case, they're blocks, but you can get them in pencil crayon format. And what they are basically, it's an ink. Once you hit water to it, it turns it into an ink. So the colors that you see here this is a quilt that's been washed more than once. The color does not come out. Once you color it with your Inktense, and I'm going to show the camera what the package looks like, you can actually draw on your fabric. I haven't tried it with yarn, but you know that's not far behind. So I just thought I wanted to combine my watercoloring, since I haven't had a chance to play with my watercolors, with my quilting and complete our UFO. Thanks to Linda, who came up with the awesome challenge of completing a UFO in our quilt guild. Now, beside my quilt is something amazing, and this is from another one of our quilters, Marlene. And Marlene does everything. She's a craft mistress of every craft that there is. And what she also does extraordinarily well is bead. And I'm going to bring over the Christmas ornament that I got from Marlene. It's totally beaded. Now, the original ornament, okay, I've got it, was better presented because, whoops, you can already see there's going to be a problem. The original ornament was just slightly less tacky. It came with a very elegant white, glass white Christmas ball, which as soon as I showed it to my family, I got it home very safely, etc., fell and splintered into a million pieces. So Marlene says, that's not a problem, just go out and get yourself another Christmas ball. And the one that you're seeing here is also a glass Christmas ball, except I had to have it, you know, studded with crystals and little snowflakes on it. So it's probably takes this amazing piece of art to a tackier level, which I really enjoy and appreciate. So Marlene, I hope you're not too upset about that. But what you'll see here is the gold that's wrapped around the Christmas ball are all tiny itty bitty, it looks like size 15 beads that Marlene beaded. Isn't that amazing? So I'm going to try to put this back on top of our fireplace without it crashing down a second time. But I do have 3 backup Christmas balls that I can install, and I've also purchased a plastic one just in case. So here we go. There it is. Ah. So that's what's in our gallery today. Now let's move on to Brilliant Knit Beads by Betsy Hershberg. Brilliant Knit Beads, first of all, I could not find the beads that I could knit the little bead cover here. So what I ended up doing was using styrofoam balls. I'll show those to you. Okay, so here's the medium-size ball that I have in styrofoam format. I have a tiny one, which is probably the size of the beads that Betsy is using in the Craftsy class to knit little covers. And I have a larger size one. So the class was a lot of fun because she goes through different ways of installing beads and different ways of knitting it, and so she makes you sort of knit for gauge. So you knit a ball, a gauge ball, I guess. So here's some of my sock yarn, and I do have a couple of beads installed on this styrofoam ball that you might see, not many. So you have to gauge swatch your bead, so to speak. So this is one of the larger ones, which of course Betsy points out can become a Christmas ball. It's probably safer for me over here with the styrofoam ball. I'll show you another one. This one is knit across and then Kitchener together. I believe this is my other sort of gauge ball, I guess you would call it. There you go. And then she shows you how to install beads. Now, of course, Betsy's beads are in a nice, very, she has a color coordinated, etc. But for me, what was important was to learn the different techniques that she shows you and how to install beads. So here's one. Let me show you another one. So you saw the original purple sock fabric. Well, here's another one with some other beads on it. And they're kind of fun. Let me see. I've got some more. Oh, look what I did. This one I sort of added an I-cord to it. And let's see. I have that one. And Betsy has a very unique way, which I haven't perfected. Like, I did not create a beautifully perfected seam with beads, but I did follow Betsy's techniques in how to do it, and I feel pretty confident that if I ever had to produce one of these balls, maybe stellar style, I would be able to pull it off with Betsy's instructions. And of course, I had some acrylic yarn and I wanted to try some sheep balls, and that's a free Ravelry pattern. I'm pretty convinced that when you're doing stranded knitting, you need to use the right yarn, and I don't think, I mean, it's not terrible, but I don't think the acrylic yarn helps here. Let me show you what else I did. So with Betsy's class, she also has a necklace where she has you sort of create a long tube, and then in between the tubes, so this is basically 2 of those styrofoam balls turned into a peanut shape. But you could string, let's say, 10 of them and then sort of snug them up here in the middle. And then here is a little ball that's actually stuffed with the yarn that I used to knit with. And what might be interesting is maybe you could felt these little balls. So you would knit up a whole bunch of wool stuffed balls and then put them in a bottle of hot water and shake them around and hope that they felt. I think that might look kind of interesting for a little beaded beads, so to speak. I think it would be kind of cool. And then you'll notice that I'm also wearing my beaded shawl by Laura Nalkin, the class that Laura Nalkin shows you how to knit a beaded shawl. This is the one that gave me the huge challenge, the Acola. But I think between the 2 classes, between Laura Nalkin and Betsy Hershberg, I think I could bead, knit, maybe not bead crochet, but I could probably put a bead in many different ways onto a knitted garment. Now I've got here another one of these little covers that, you know, did not fit any of my styrofoam balls, but what I did was, and you might want to try it too, this one is crocheted here. I hate to show it, I was just playing around with crochet and beads. But what it is basically sort of a cover or decorative flower that you cover a magnet, and you can use it as sort of a shawl pin. So here I've covered just a circle with 2 magnets, and it acts as a shawl pin. So I can just lift it off and put it back on with the magnet in the back. So you'll see there's a strong magnet here in the back. that's holding my sort of shawl button in place. So I think the class, even though I didn't create a beaded bead necklace, is sort of inspirational for a lot of other items that you can create using little bits of yarn, leftover yarn, some beads, and your knitting needles. So it was a fun class, and I think it's a lot of fun, especially now. You can probably take her class and knit yourself some Christmas balls. And yeah, what was really interesting, I should point out that this sort of ball, there were no decreases done. It was just basically cinched together at the top. You didn't have to decrease to create sort of a circle. I thought that was very cool. And let's talk about our next class, which is Improve Your Knitting with Patty Lyons. Now, I've been talking about Patty Lyons' class for months now, and I've been training using her Improve Your Knitting techniques. That class by Patty Lyons goes through, I would say, almost everything. All the different, well, maybe I don't know that it's everything, but many different styles of knitting, Eastern versus Western. And it does my favorite technique, which is knitting backwards. So you're knitting backwards, you're knitting forwards, you're doing Portuguese style knitting. And then she sort of makes you swatch and train your eye to recognize the different stance or different mounts that your knitting stitches can take on, and what you do to create a beautiful knit stitch. So I have been practicing with Patty Lyons' class, and I'm planning to do that for the rest of the holidays. And it's something I can do with a piece of scrap yarn in the company of family and friends over the holidays, because in 2015 I have big plans. My plans for knitting are all about the sweater. Next year I'm going to be going into sweater knitting, and as a result I'm getting ready now with all this training with Patty Lyons' class. The class itself on Craftsy, she has quite a few patterns that she gives you in addition to the instruction that she walks you through in the class. It's a technique class from what I can tell, but you do have some practice patterns that are really quite attractive for you to test out the different techniques. And more than likely I'm going to do maybe a cowl. There is a sweater in there as well. I'm not sure yet which one of the patterns I'm going to do, but I'm going to follow one of them, and you can look forward to seeing the result of that next year. Also, getting ready for the sweater 2015 project. I realize that my podcasts, they only come out once a month when I'm lucky, and that's only because that's how long it takes me to accomplish some of these classes, some of the projects. They're quite involved, the class. When you go through each class, you're really getting your money's worth. Going through a class does take a lot of effort for me to learn how to do it, and then to produce some of the projects that the class has. So for next year's sweater classes, I don't want to list them all here. I might just show all the different pictures of all the sweater classes that I'm planning to do. But I'll mention that for Patty Lyons' class, I did purchase the wool from Craftsy that goes with her projects. So I have that. And some of the other sweater classes, I did purchase the recommended wool, or the wool that the teacher is using, just so that I can see the result of, compare the result that I'm getting with the result that the teacher is producing in the Craftsy class. So the sweater quantities that I have purchased include Icelandic sweater, so it's Lopi wool. I've also purchased the class Custom Yoke Sweater by Amy Detchen. And I should mention something now that I really appreciate from Amy Detchen's class. Like, I've just sort of skimmed over it. But one piece of information that I took away from Amy's class is that when you're doing your sweater, instead of swatching a swatch, because you guys know I love to swatch and I believe in swatching, it has brought me some success so far, so I'm not going to stop stuff that works. She says, why not swatch it into a hat or some sort of an item? So, for example, the Custom Yoke sweater is the one with the little squirrels all the way around. Well, I swatched a hat that I cannot show you because my son has decided he loves that hat, and that's where it is now. So he's wearing it. I might post a picture of the swatch. So my little tip to you guys is basically Amy's tip. I'm not sure if she said it this far, but basically when you're buying your sweater quantity, buy an extra swatch skein and skein it into and swatch it into a small project like a hat or these gloves, so that you can sort of try out your wool and get your gauge, and at the same time, you know, you'll have a hat that you can wear, or you'll have a hat that you might have to undo to retrieve some yarn because you didn't buy enough yarn or whatever it may be. So, coming to these gloves that I'm wearing, these are also swatching from a sweater quantity of yarn. My mom went to Machu Picchu, Peru, and she has come back and brought me yarn, baby alpaca from Peru, in industrial size quantities. And I will show you what I'm doing now to house my new stash. I'm planning to build myself a huge collection of yarn, a yarn tower of cardboard boxes full of sweater quantities, I suspect. So what I've been doing is I have some of these boxes where over here I've got a little hole and I put the actual yarn. I stick the actual ball band right on the top of the box, which I will stack like this because I'm expecting to have a tower. And then once I have blocked these, I have not blocked these yet, I will get to them in a second. Once I've blocked them and I've decided what the before and after blocking gauge is, I can write it directly on the box. I could put a tag on it, I could do whatever, because these boxes I can just get another box, or it doesn't matter. And the reason I have them like this and I have the tab opening like this is because when I have that huge stack of boxes, I want to be able to get to the one that's right at the bottom without undoing any of my boxes. And they're sturdy enough for me to pile sweater quantity boxes, sweater quantity filled boxes, one on top of the other. Now this one I've loaded with one skein of each of the 4 sweater quantity that my mom has brought back from Peru, and I will show them to you. So let me see, can I put this back here? Okay. So the wool that I used for these mitts, which are called Susie Rogers Reading Mitts, it's a popular pattern on Ravelry and they knit up really quickly. My mom has 10 skeins of red, 10 skeins of blue, 10 skeins of this sort of beige color that I'm wearing, the same type of wool, and it's called Indiecita DK. And then she has a very fine baby alpaca. I guess they're all sort of 50-gram skeins. The wool is super warm and very cuddly, so I'm really looking forward to knitting those sweaters next year. In the meantime, I have my reading mitts where I got to try out some of the gauge swatching. And this was the first one that I did, and you'll notice here on the top it's a bit wider than this one. And that's because the original pattern, actually this is the size large that I knit with this yarn, but the original pattern basically has you knit sort of the circumference of your wrist all the way up to the end. And I didn't like the way this is kind of baggy. So what I did here, just before I got to the lace portion of the top, is I reduced the number of stitches here. So it actually went from, 45 stitches all the way around to 36 when I started the lace. And I find it fits better, but it doesn't seem to show that there is a decrease. But it just seems to fit better, in my opinion. So I'm just going to undo this little piece here and reknit it to match this particular glove. And yeah, so that's what happened when my mom went to Machu Picchu. I got some more knitting yarn. Woohoo! And now let's talk about our contests. We had 2 fun contests in our Ravelry group, Quilt Moxie. The Ravelry group, the podcast in Ravelry. And the first one that came due was, it was due November 15th. And the other one was due November 30th. So I'm going to announce the winners to both of those contests here today. The exciting Yazzie 2-in-1 storage bag. Oh wow, I love my Yazzie 2-in-1 storage organizer. Yazzie went to the Houston International Quilt Show. We have spoken, and she had a phenomenal success. In fact, she's gearing up to do another 2 to 3 months jet set back to the United States to a whole bunch of different shows. I will include that in the show notes today, so that if you want to check out Yazzie, you'll know where she is. And she has told me that there is no problem. I can continue showing off the Yazzie bags. And the winner of today's Yazzie bag is the Yazzie bag of her or his or her choice. It does not have to be the 2-in-1 block organizer bag that she debuted to the quilters in Houston. It could be anything that you see on our website, any organizer to your heart's content. And I also said that we would include my mailing list with the Ravelry group. So if you had subscribed to my mailing list and you're getting my podcast by email, because as you know, it doesn't come out that often, so when it does, you'll be the first one to get it. You could, in theory, enter twice. You could enter once in the Ravelry group and once as a subscriber. Now the thing with the email, getting your podcast by email, I don't know who you are. The only thing I can see is your email address, which doesn't tell us anything. And if you've given me your first and last name, and the computer can tell by your, okay, I'm going to go a little geeky here, by your IP address where you might be living or where you signed up. So the person that I random.org selected, okay, you guessed it, just when I'm about to announce the winner, my video camera's battery died. And I only found out during editing. So there's about 4 minutes where you won't see any video, and I've decided to include our little fireplace and some of the snow that we got over the last day or so for your enjoyment. So the winner is from my email list. You've been receiving my podcast by email, and because of that, I cannot announce a name because the only thing I know is your email. But what's interesting is you could easily have entered in both Ravelry and through my podcast by email and had 2 entries to win this amazing Yazzie bag. What you should be looking out for is an email from me announcing that you have won the Yazzie bag of your choice, and you'll come back to me with your name, your address, and a telephone number, and you go to yazzie.com to select the Yazzie organizer that you would like to have shipped to you. So congratulations! I'd like to add a little disclaimer. Just in case I don't hear from the winner for whatever reason within, let's say, 1 month after the podcast has gone out, I'd like to go ahead and draw for another winner. Now, our next contest was My First Socks by Lucy Neatbee. Lucy Neatbee herself, another awesome Craftsy teacher, contacted me to let me know that we could give away one of her classes, My First Socks. And when I reviewed that class, you will remember that I thought I was pretty good at knitting socks by now, but I learned so much from this class, which is supposedly a basic class, but this is a really great class, and it should be in your Craftsy catalog if you don't have it already. Or it could be given as a gift to somebody who would like to learn how to knit socks. This is just a fabulous class. And the winner for this class is Agnes Knit. And Agnes Knit, aka Diane in Ravelry, we had asked everybody to talk about their favorite sock story. And I'm going to read to you what she wrote as her favorite sock story, because you will not believe what her sock story is. Agnes Knit, also known as Diane, wrote, 9 years ago I got back to knitting after a long break. A new LYS opened near me and I went by to take a look. They were offering a sock knitting class with a guest instructor. I had never knit socks, but I decided to sign up for the class. I thought it would be fun to give it a try. I went to the class. The teacher was terrific, very enthusiastic about knitting in general, and especially about knitting socks. I knit my first sock, baby-sized, during the class. Only later, after joining Ravelry, did I realize what a special experience I'd had. That terrific, enthusiastic teacher was Kat Bordy. Isn't that awesome? Congratulations, Diane. Let me show you another one of the 5 organizers that I am using that Yazzie sent me. And it's called the Multifunctional Organizer Size Large. I hope this is coming through on the camera. Here is sort of a little promo sheet that she sends out with each one of her organizers. This is what it looks like. Isn't it cute? Hot pink. And you know what's in it? All my quilting supplies. But it could be whatever it is that you want to organize. You could put your jewelry or your or your knitting supplies or whatever it is. But in my case, it's for quilting. So here you can see some of my pens and marking tools, measuring tools, needles, glue, thread, etc. I've got hand quilting supplies, some more. And I like these pages. I think it's such a great idea to have pages. The last one has sort of a covered, fabric covered zippered pocket, and I've got my rotary cutter in here. And you can really load it up, and it will still zip closed. Sorry about the zipper sound. It closes up, you've got a little handle, and it fits into my 2-in-1 block organizer. I love it! So Yazzie has informed me that until further notice, you can still use your Quilt Moxie coupon code for reductions. Check the show notes for what they are, or our website. I'm sure it's documented, everything that you can get with that coupon code. She is waiting for me to give her 5 names for winners in upcoming Yazzie contests, and as far as I understand it, she has extended this to be whatever organizer you want. So all we have to do is think of some exciting contests to do, and one of you will have the chance of getting your own Yazzie. Actually 4 more, including today, 5 people will get their own Yazzie organizer, and everybody else, you can go to her website, yazzie.com, and use our coupon code and get your own Yazzie bag. You're gonna love it. Which brings me now to our tips and demo, and the first tip is actually not my tip. It is Myra Wood's tip from the Crazy Lace cardigan class, which I loved as well on Craftsy. She said, get yourself a steamer. Now I don't have the fancy one that she has on the Craftsy class, but I got this one. What kind is this? It's by Conair. I don't know. But guess what? I love this steamer. This is so much fun. When you want to steam block your swatch, because you don't have time to do a full soak swatch, this is perfect. It's I've used the steamer for all sorts of stuff. I've used it for the quilt over here. It's just, what a great suggestion, Myra. I'm so glad that I finally took you up on that. She was very adamant that steaming was the way to go for somebody who is a crafter and perhaps not all that patient, but steaming is the way to go. So it's something that, now that I knit and quilt, I don't regret having a steamer that I can grab easily and use. So, great tip. Now I'm going to show you what I affectionately call my slog of love, and it's in my Christmas knitting bag. It's a bucket bag. I created this bucket bag last year, I guess, from one of the free Craftsy classes. You can make your own bucket bag by Kristen Link. And in it is my slog of love. Now I'm going to take off my gloves for this. Basically what it is knitting 2 stranded socks at 2 at a time. So that means I've got 4 balls of yarn, and here it is, here it's coming out. 4 strands of yarn and 1 knitting needle all the way around. Okay, now on my YouTube channel I have yarn tension management, which I was surprised to see is probably my most popular video, but because it was one of my first videos, the quality may not have been that good, and I had to look at it again to realize that at some important moments my hand actually is not even on the screen. So I had planned to do another video for March next year, but I thought this was the perfect project to show some of these stranded knitting techniques. I want to show you this sock. I really, really love it. This is one of the socks by, the pattern is called Heinrich by Stephanie van der Linden. Look at that, isn't that cool? And the yarn is just amazing. This is a skein of yarn that I got from Invictus Yarns, the sort of gold color that you see there. It's just amazing to knit with. And the brown is an Alpaca blended sock yarn by Fortissima. Now the reason I'm bringing this up is because this sock is ideal for showing my latest greatest stranded yarn techniques that I'm enjoying. Now I'm going to bring this to the camera, and what you might notice is that when you're doing your stranded knitting, usually it comes out really sort of bumpy and buckly because of the stranding knitting, the nature of it itself. But I find that it's coming out kind of flat. This part up to about here, I used my own way of wrapping the yarn so that every third or fourth stitch it would be trapped. But now, I was reading in a magazine. Let me show you the magazine. Hold on. Okay, this one. Got it from the library. It's the Interweave Knits magazine, spring 2014. And there's an article in here, which I should have tagged so that we wouldn't be looking through this. And it talks about stranded knitting. And on the bottom of, wait a minute, what page is this? On the bottom, who's the article by? Let's start with the article. Is Holding Yarns for Stranded Colorwork, 3 Methods by Daniela Nee, I think. Okay, now I'd like to give her credit, and that's why I'm letting you know that's where I learned it. But the way I interpret it, I hope that's what she meant. If it's not, well, I really like it, whatever it is. I really think this is a great way of doing stranded knitting. And what I'm going to do now is show you my slog of love. Let's see if we can do this without all the yarns getting all tangly. So first of all, you might have heard that when you're doing your stranded knitting, it's a good idea to knit it inside out, and that's because your floats will end up being longer, and you won't have that sort of short floats, which makes the yarn less stretchy, etc. It just doesn't make it as stretchy as it should be, because really the floats, you can always make it shorter, but you can't make them longer. And what Daniela Nee has suggested, and I really love it, is that the long floats, and this pattern has long floats on practically every row. Long floats, I mean more than 3 stitches before you have to sort of wrap your yarn. She says the row you're on, don't wrap the float. But on the subsequent row, you're going to wrap them. And that's what I want to show you in the demo, how I hold my yarn and how I'm doing the wraps. And you're going to notice here, for example, oops, I hope that wasn't too loud for you. You're going to notice how long my floats are. I'm going to come close to the camera. Look how long these floats are on the row that I'm working on. But on the row below it, they look like they're embedded really nicely. And I find that you don't get that laddering weird effect that you would get when you're wrapping it traditionally, because you're actually wrapping the yarn on the row above. Very, very cool. So I might have to rearrange the camera to do the demo, which I'm going to do now. Okay, and we'll see you back at the end of the show. Show in this demo a little bit, a better close-up of how I hold my yarn for yarn tension management. And I'm going to be using this sock, which is called Heinrich by Stephanie van der Linden, to show some of the techniques that I've been using for stranded knitting. And you've got two yarns. One is the brown and the other one is this gorgeous gold color, which is my what is that, contrasting yarn? It's the one that I want to showcase. So it should be the dominating yarn is the yellow and the background yarn is the brown. And my background color, I'm always, because I'm doing this continental style, I'm using the background yarn towards the right and the feature yarn, the yellow, which is towards my left on my one hand. So now, let me show you how I grab my yarn. Continental style means that I'm holding both yarns on the left hand. I start with my pinky. I wrap my pinky, wrap my ring finger clockwise, trap my pinky, trap the string, form a peace sign, turn, and twist. So again, we're doing pinky, wrap the ring, pinky, trap the string, peace sign, turn, and twist. Here we go again. Pinky, wrap the ring, trap the string, peace sign, turn, and twist. Pinky, wrap the ring, trap the string, piece, turn, and twist. Okay, so let's get started. So now I've got a long float from the row below, okay, that I'm going to wrap in this row. So I'm going to knit, let's say, 3 in this color. 1, 2, 3. And now to wrap it, I bring it up from below and just knit so that it's caught in the back. And now I'm going to create a new float for this long float. I've got 7 stitches that I'm going to knit. So we got 6, 7, 3, 6, 7. Now my next 2 stitches are going to be the background color, and I keep my finger, this finger here, and wrap the float around it to create that extra space that you need for the floats. Now we're back to the yellow thread. I'm going to pick some yellow. And I'm feeling in the back here, always, I feel in the back to see if there's a float that needs to be wrapped. I don't feel one, so I just continue knitting. 4, 5 stitches. Ah, here's a float that I can wrap, so I just pop it on top of my needle and knit it together with the next stitch. So I've got my 6, and then again I'm going to put my finger here to give myself a nice long float and knit the next dark color, go back to the yellow, and knit 5. I can feel in the back right now that there is a long float from the row below. I just pop it on top of my needle and knit it with the next stitch. And I can do maybe 2 or 3 more stitches and wrap again. So, and then here again, to create a nice long float, I put my finger and I knit the next one. I have 3 brown to knit, and I can even put my finger again before I switch over to the yellow. At least don't remove your finger, knit 2 stitches and then you can remove your finger. Feel for a long float from the row below, pick it up and knit it together. One, two, three. Actually, this one should have been brown, so let me just knit that together with the brown. No big deal. And now I've got a long float of 6 coming up. Ah, look, there's a long float here. I can pop that on top and knit it with the yellow. So I've got 6. Now I've created a long area of stitches again. Here I stick my finger, whichever one is available, and then I knit the brown, keeping this as a long float. I only need 1, and then I do at least 2 stitches of yellow, or 2 stitches, and then I can remove my finger from the long float. Okay, so here you can see the long floats that we've created here. And on the front, you're going to see that the stitches still look very nice, and for a stranded fabric, it is kind of stretchy. So again, reviewing how I do yarn tension management for long floats. I twist it, and then like this and like this, and then I stab it with my middle finger in between the 2 yarns and lay it on top. So thank you so much for joining me here today, and congratulations to all the winners. Please be sure to contact me with your address, name and address, and telephone number for the Yazzie winner, so that we can get your prize delivered to you. And join us next time, which is probably going to be next year. So I wish you and your family a happy and safe holiday season, and hope to see you again in 2015. Take care. À la prochaine.